Okay, it's connecting to LinkedIn. Okay, that's what's happening. All right, let's give it a minute.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience if anybody's looking at
Okay,
this.
now it just changed. It says attending.
Okay, cool. All right, then let me go to LinkedIn. I think I have to hit whatever live then on that event. Let's try this. All right. Mm, let's see. Starting soon. Okay, okay. Thank you for. I can't say when you going to start. Okay. Well, thank you guys. Oh gosh, thank you guys for showing up. All right, let's try this again. What the fuck? LinkedIn profile. Okay, let's. Okay, I'm seeing us on LinkedIn. But here, let me. Let's. I'm gonna go back to. All right, let me reply. Let me. Let's see if that's working. Oh my goodness.
Don't stress.
Uh,
Like it happens.
yeah,
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we learn and we do it again.
yeah. Okay. Amy.
Okay, so you posted a link.
Okay, let's see.
You posted another link.
I don't know why, for some reason, one of them is not showing and one of them is.
It's what's kept me from LinkedIn Live because I just, that RMTP or RT, one is Rocky Mountain National Park and one is the LinkedIn feed, right? And it's just, it makes it a challenge, right? Like, what's your learning curve?
Yeah. Okay, we have 5 people here. Hey guys, thanks for finding us. We clearly are figuring this out. And here, I wonder if I can. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Linda, do you want to find out where everybody's from?
I can't see them.
Oh, you can't. Okay, well, we have here. If you also, Linda, if you want to go to the LinkedIn page as well, looks like we have 5 people.
Okay. Like, I'm mad texting over here to people. So, y'all forgive the eye contact because I literally cannot text and look at the camera. So, but it happens.
All right, we're getting a little bit of thumbs up. You guys, thank you. We're figuring this out. We are new to this, and we're just excited to chat with you guys. We do actually have a great conversation in store for you, and I think everybody will get a lot from it. Um, so, if anything, we'll figure it out later.
It's the definition of bravery. Yeah, someone mentioned, it's an unusual way to do an event. And like, I've been live on stage at keynotes and the microphone went out. I've been live on stage and there was no slide presentation. That disappeared. And part of being a pro is just, we still know what we're talking about, right? And, webinars are different. They're a little more forgiving. And then you've done podcasts,
Yeah.
but that's a recording with an edit button. And now it's like, okay. And, the format of Riverside and StreamYard is another one I've seen used as, there's not really a test run, I guess, unless we did it at 2 o'clock in the morning and hoped all our friends were asleep and
I'm
you're
gonna I'm
still
gonna
on LinkedIn.
I'm gonna
You know,
chalk this up to user error. But
I
hey,
mean, it
we're here.
happens, right? But that's how we figure it out, and we go, oh, we can, we'll do it better next time.
Yeah,
But the flip
absolutely.
side is the old me would have waited 3 years and tried it out 47 times, and that's not what we're talking about either.
Yeah.
So
And
it just has to be okay.
yeah, this is the cool thing. Just for everybody that's listening, Linda and I actually met through one of these LinkedIn Live events, and I think in the course of one month, we've decided to do this event together, and we've been just talking business, collaborating, networking, whatnot, kind of sharing resources, sharing insights. And so, I guess in the nature of this conversation as well, Leadership Unleashed, unconventional strategies for bold results. A big part of it is just showing up. So, while we wait for potentially some more people to join, would love to encourage everybody to cross network, maybe meet one another if you'd like to. Put where you're from in the chat. And I want to just suggest, feel free to cross, either follow or like or connect with one another. I think this is LinkedIn ultimately working. So I think a big part of that is show up digitally, show up in real life, show up here. Perfect.
You'll have to
Um,
tell me what you're seeing because I don't have that up yet.
well, I am here, Linda. I
Yeah.
will. Here, let me text this to you. So I'm
I mean,
actually
it is an
looking.
unconventional strategy, right? It's like, okay, there's a lot going on. If you've never hosted a live of any kind and you're trying to make good eye contact in your webcam and kind of keep an eye on Jackie, see if she needs anything, and oh, where are your notes? They're down here in front of me. And where's your phone? And where's the dog for those of you trying to work from home? It can be a lot of stimulus going on at one time, but it's good practice for staying focused in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything, there will be a recording. So big picture is what we're trying to talk about here is really as leadership as a guideship. I think showing up being a big part of it, but showing up in the right spaces, being authentic to yourself, and releasing a little bit of the reins of control over ourselves as well as our teams. I think that's a big part of it. My name is Jackie Domanus. I am the founder and owner of Idea Citizen. It is a LinkedIn group. I want to encourage everybody to find it and join. It has 1.5 million members. I started it back in 2008 as a TED Talks fan group. Love just kind of what TED and everything stands for. And as time went on, it's felt like there was an opportunity to encourage people to share their own thoughts outside of, say, a big black stage with a red dot right in the middle of it. And leadership, as we just like the evolution of the group for me and my journey myself, leadership is evolving. And if you're paying attention, you'll see it happening in really unexpected ways all around us.
So where I come in, right? So 4 weeks ago, Dennis Mullen is actually responsible for this. We were on a different LinkedIn Live, and I was talking about groups. I don't know about y'all, and feel free to put it in the chat. There are lots of groups that appear to be just meme factories or only the owner speaks. And I love the idea of a group. And he says, oh, you need to check out Idea Citizen. And then I end up on another live with Jackie, and same thing. I get a little suspicious when people send you the connection request and the pitch slap is coming. And my favorite are, Linda, I just want to talk to you about your payroll system. I'm like, yeah, I'm a party of one. Linda, I want to talk about brokering your benefits. I'm like, party of one. Because you didn't read my profile. But Jackie and I hit it off and we start doing ooh, you have interesting things going. Ooh, you have interesting things going. And we were on the phone, LinkedIn, doing its job and being unconventional. I was actually at the barn with my horse and I had her in one ear and the horse on the other ear. And we were talking about what do you want to do? And she said, I want to do lives. And I said, put one on the calendar. We'll just do it. We'll get
Yeah.
through the tech. We'll get through it'll be fine. Because more and more, if you've seen any kind of report out there in leadership, the problem right now is people will not innovate. Not cannot, will not. There's not creative problem solving. And really, that's, I think, where you and I bonded, is talking about perfectionism rising up has killed curiosity.
Yeah.
And you cannot have unconventional, you cannot have innovation while expecting people to be perfect. Or someone's 98% awesome and you want to talk about the 2%. So that's really our jumping off point as well. And if you could have been a fly on the wall an hour ago, what we said was, it's okay. If you interrupt me, there's grace. If the tech doesn't work, there's grace. I mean the best for you. And she's like, and I mean the best for you. And I wish I had had that throughout my career
Yeah.
versus a text message. Like I got one time in the middle of a presentation that's like on slide 74, and there shouldn't have been 74 slides. There's a typo. Well, it didn't help in the middle of the presentation. So if you had that as you've experienced like conventional leadership over there, feedback for every possible problem versus, hey, let's just draw out what you're good at, what went well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of this conversation, or at least gearing up for this conversation, I really started thinking about the evolution of leadership and how did we even get to this point? And I'd like to just share because I went through like a historical perspective of it and understanding. So back in the 18th and 19th century, we're kind of thinking a little bit more autocratic leadership. So it's like very much hierarchical. And I understand that period in time, potentially like why that was the case. But so think about this around the time of Andrew Carnegie. Then we move on to more bureaucratic leadership. So think of like rules and chains of command and efficient and consistency. Like we're in the Henry Ford era era. And then we get into transformational leadership. So this is kind of where you really see kind of a change and transition in some of these things. You're going to see inspiring and motivation and innovation. So right around then we're like think about like Martin Luther King Jr. and Winston Churchill. And then we get into like kind of more, things that are even still discussed today. So like servant leadership, so empathy and serving teams. Think Sam Walton, Howard Schultz of Starbucks, which then ultimately ends up we have two things that have kind of been happening for the mid 20th and 21st century. So we have situational leadership, which I've heard that oftentimes. So adapting leadership styles to whatever the team is and their needs. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy. And then right now we're kind of at the stage of like collaborative leadership. So it's empowering diverse teams, sharing responsibilities, and innovation. But still, I don't know, Linda, tell me what you think, but I still think we're at this point where like there's a little bit of playing it safe. Like I'll speak for myself where I've been in environments where it felt like, oh, like I don't feel like I fit here, and I've also at the same time been in environments where I fully felt there, and I fully felt just excited about everything that I was able to contribute, and like I didn't second guess myself, and I kept at it, and I think that there's an opportunity, and that's part of the nature of this conversation to really like understand that as a leader for yourself and also understand that like if you are actually leading a team, how to celebrate these things, how to celebrate these things in people. And you might not notice it, but we're going to go through kind of what some of those things actually look like and what's happening today.
You went through three major pieces, right? So you see me making notes because if you're not ADHD and you're listening, yay you, because I am. So she went three directions with the work I do and what we talked about. So you mentioned guideship. It's a term that I have started using over the last year or so. I really sat down and went, where am I at in my own leadership? Where have I felt like I belonged? Where have I felt like I didn't belong? And what I came to is the concept of guideship. And honestly, it started from watching whitewater raft guides. And nobody's writing a book about how they lead. But this is a person that takes 8 to 10 tourists that you're just remotely assigned, and they may not be competent at all. And they need to form a team immediately and get down the river safely. And they form teams quickly. And what I found out is guideship has three pieces, and we haven't talked about them. So in that history Jackie did, a lot of the 1950s, 1960s, really into the 90s, leadership styles never mentioned followers. Never. They're just like, if you lead, they will come. Like, okay, Pied Piper. But we didn't talk about how do you follow. And, if you have access to the chat and can answer, how collaborative are you when the idea that got picked isn't yours? Because I'm much more collaborative when it was my idea. So we have
Same.
leadership, and then we have followership. So can I, when Jackie leads, can I follow her and answer her question? Or am I like, no, you may not realize that I have the corner office and here's my job title. And I'm like flexing on position. And then the third piece is management. Somehow management became a slur, and we're like, you must lead, you must be a visionary. Well, you also need to pay the electric bill, you also need to read a financial, you also need to staff effectively. So to me, you'll hear me say all guides are leaders, but not all leaders are guides, because a guide has all three pieces, and you're triangulating. Even now, there's moments like I am leading the conversation, Jackie is thinking about what will go, but she's following me. And then we're going to pivot back. And that's what's missing a lot of the time. Sometimes we have the person leading, shouldn't be. Some of y'all pick your most change resistant humans to lead change because they're in a job title that they should be good at change and they're terrible at it. Instead of picking someone that's good at it. So that's kind of that nutshell, and I call it generative leadership. So I'll add some definition here, so because you said adaptive leadership, we said transformational leadership, and so in my past life, I was the HR lady, right, for 20 something years, and everyone's had a performance eval, and 90% of them are a scale of 1 to 5. 3 meets expectations, and then a 4 exceeds expectations regularly. And then nobody actually knows what a 5 is. Or you'll have leaders that, like, no one's perfect. I couldn't possibly give a 5. Well, then it's 1 to 4. What's your problem? And what, I mean, true. I mean, I've had people go, oh, I couldn't possibly give a 5. Like, well, then why do we have it? But generative leadership to me is a 4 that creates more 4s. So if you're really good at what you do, but you're selfish, and y'all take a minute and think of that person in your life. They're very good at sales, they're very good at finance, but they don't know how to send the elevator back down. I am never going to give them a 5. A 5 is a 4 that replicates. And I think that's so important. Anthony, if you're here, you asked a question in LinkedIn about how do we scale. And the key is that guides create more guides. It's not that Linda comes in and teaches all of you. It's not that a train the trainer happens. It's not that HR does it. It's guides create more guides. We've been doing it for generations. So what are your thoughts there when I kind of add that into your historical perspective and where we are now?
Yeah, I think we haven't been doing a very good job of that. And I think that yes, there are. I think that throughout history, there's obviously been people that have accomplished that. I think that we can. I think we can do a better job of it. I think that. I think for my takeaway from this is a little bit like sometimes people can be somewhat precious about their role or insecure or whatnot. And I think that, I feel like we gotta let go of some of those things. And I think that's, for sake of unlearning certain things, I think that's actually a big part of it. And actually something I do want to contribute here as well is that one of the things in environments that I've also been in sometimes where it's like, if we're talking about unlearning things, there's this commonality of saying no. And I I struggle with that word in the context of specifically if we're talking like brainstorming, ideating, this and that. And I personally think that like in that environment, leadership aside, it's like this is an environment of yes, yes to everything because yes is build on top of different things as opposed to no where you're like okay where do I go with this. And I think it's a rule also in yeah I think it's a rule in I think it's is it improv comedy or something like that. I think they have a term, and I'm not a comic, but it's yes and, or it's yes and, or
Mhm.
it's about continuing that story, continuing that narrative, and we're never going to do that if it's no, if it's hierarchical, if it's authoritative, whatnot, and and really, if you also think about it, like great ideas are only going to come from innovation. And so when I've been kind of doing a little bit more of this research, it's like who's showing up, how do we get people noticing them, who's quietly solving problems that we're not really thinking of. So for me, I've kind of identified a few different people as a rule breaker or as like leaders that even today we don't think of them as rule breakers because we've accepted them say in day-to-day dialogue as like a leader. But I mean, let's go back to Steve Jobs. Like Steve Jobs, he's a rule breaker. He was a rule breaker,
He's an
excuse
HR
me.
nightmare. He's
A
brilliant, but
nightmare.
he's an HR nightmare,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I know, and I don't know if like Steve Jobs necessarily is the most today when we're talking about it's not necessarily the most innovative example, but honestly, I didn't really like some of the other examples I was coming up with, so
Right.
he's my favorite. But like, really, if you want to think about like these are the people who see flaws in bureaucracy and they resist business as usual. Frankly, these people are very hard to work with. They're not. It's not. You know. it's it's not like smooth sailing always, but I think it's important to acknowledge these voices, that they have a role, that they have some, if anything, if you think about it, like these people care so much about
Yes.
whatever you're doing. My fear, and there's plenty of other kind of people that we should consider, but my fear here is that like you're rule breakers, if you should be scared when they stop talking,
Yes.
because then they don't care. And I mean, and I think we've all been in environments or organizations where, say, like we're challenging, challenging status quo, and then when you've lost the love, you just back off and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you lost me.
And
Do you
there's a
have any?
recruiter in their LinkedIn mailbox like, hey, I'll listen to you.
Absolutely, yeah,
Because I don't know that they ever stop caring. They just stop realizing they can't do it for you because the
yeah,
unwillingness to climb in the box and quit is not in them. So they'll leave.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that one of the things, so I teach a class on creative problem solving, at the undergraduate level. And when you mentioned brainstorming, I wish more people would go learn how to brainstorm.
Hmm.
They think it's just, let's throw some ideas up on the board. And there's two phases, right? Let's geek out on terminology. Divergent thinking, that is where we go, how are we going to improve morale? And when I'm like, hey, margaritas would be amazing, you have to put that up there. You can't go, no, Linda, we have a no alcohol policy, because what you've done is tried to engage in convergent thinking. And my brain's like, well, I don't want to play anymore then. And we lie to people. We lie at home to our spouse. Hey, baby, where would you like to go on vacation? I would love to go to Greece. Well, I don't know what budget you think we have to go to Greece. And then your spouse is like, I don't want to play this stupid game anymore. It's I'm so glad you brought it up, because the brainstorming is where you can wake your talent back up,
Yeah.
but it has to have the rules of, if they're like, hey, we could use 30% raises, you've got to keep your face right, right? Spiritual Botox,
Yeah.
just keep your face right and put 30% raises. And then later on, you figure out, okay, we don't have that budget, but we have this. But if you continue to do them in the name of efficiency, that is why your brainstorms have crickets, because
Yeah.
the brain instantly learns, like, oh, you didn't actually want innovation.
Yeah.
You didn't actually want my ideas, and I'm not playing anymore.
And these are like the louder people, and you go to the complete opposite end. What about the quiet innovators? Um, Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, is somebody that came up when I was doing some of my research. And these, I mean, I'm in a room oftentimes. I can tend to be one of the louder people, and I'm fully aware of that. Like, I look around some of my colleagues, and if it's just the two of us, we'll have engaging conversations. They'll be full of passion, thoughts, and everything. But put them in a room with a bunch of people, people shut up. They're not going to speak up, and they're not always seeking the spotlight, but they're working behind the scenes. They're solving problems, creating breakthroughs. And I don't think we tap into, we use a lot of times the language around extroversion and introversion, but like, I think we need to shepherd through, or at least celebrate also, like these, let's say, introverted leaders as well, or introverted thinkers. Like, and we're not doing it.
No. And we're not doing it in the name of space and efficiency. Again, so now that's twice we've said efficiency. I am painfully introverted. You might be listening like, really? Yeah, I speak on schedule. Jackie said, hey, Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern, you're going to talk. And I'm like, okay, cool. If you call me to a meeting with no agenda, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, and there's 5 extroverts that are telling me what I should think, and 3 of them already interrupted me, no, I'm not sharing. So, did you send an agenda to help people prepare? Did you have an anonymous way? Like, I use a platform called Menti, where people can put their ideas in, because the idea is more important than who said it. If you want people to really tell you what's wrong with your culture, you can't have their name tacked on it. If you want to ask a question, I was in a room one day and a leader was, we're very values driven. And I'm like, okay, are we very values driven? And I put it up on screen, and survey says, no. And
Well,
then it was like, oh, well, which value are we not following?
I'm gonna copy some words that, or I'm gonna quote somebody from one of my earlier podcasts, Elaine
Oh,
Richards.
tell
She's
me.
like, "Culture is not the words on your wall.
Thank
culture
you.
is not the words on your wall. I'm going to say it one more time. Culture is not the words on your wall because it's like, just because you put it on a wall does not make it true. Are you out of your mind?
No, it makes it funny, is what it like. If you're not going to live your culture, please do not put it up on posters to just remind people all the time. Hi, welcome back to work. These are the things we won't do again today.
Yeah.
Just take them down.
Yeah.
And that's not, every culture is not going to be perfect. There are cultures that are truly toxic and they know it and they pay a lot of money and they're like, deal with it. But they also don't put up posters that are like, oh, we value respect and teamwork. And sometimes feral people do really well in those cultures where they at least know it's fair. I knew it was tough. Versus there's the poster that says, my voice is heard, I'm included, I belong. And yet here you and I are very successful professionals going, yeah, I didn't feel like I belonged at all.
Yeah.
And how do we fix that, right?
Linda, the next one I'm going to mention is radical thinkers. I feel like this one actually speaks to you. I feel like as your friend, I feel like I look at you as a radical thinker, and how these people are defined is ultimately people that they think outside the box, but also they've just like built a completely different box. And so
Yeah.
they're it's sometimes it feels risky, sometimes it feels unpolished, sometimes it can lead to ultimately transformative change if you really take it into consideration. In my research, CEO of Microsoft came up, and again, we accept these people because they have these titles with these big companies and everything, but like these people or these people are represented in our organizations and in each of us potentially in some capacity. So it's like, what are your thoughts on those people that like don't really fit the mold and kind of fitting into an organization, or at least like even as a manager or leader, how do you celebrate? Okay, maybe it's not celebrating. How do you nurture these people? How would have you liked to have been nurtured?
I think, and this is where we get back to kind of the forest, right? Which set off this whole thing that I do. So in the forest, there's the mycelium. Let's geek out for just a minute. You can go into any forest and you're going to find little mushrooms and little beetles and little moss. And it's not about the trees. The trees are not going to thrive unless the soil is right. So you've got to think about who created the box in the first place. I wrote earlier today, one of my posts on LinkedIn was about we wrote job descriptions. And then we're like, Jackie, you're an HR person. Get in the box. Linda, same exact job description. Get in the box. And I spent the better part of 20 years in HR trying to get in the box. I wore a suit and the heels and worked on my credibility and would never have said a curse word. The first time I saw Gary Vaynerchuk speak and he dropped an F bomb, I was like, there's my people. And I was in male dominated industries where I didn't need to be in a suit and be nice. I needed to be a little bit intimidating and rough. But if you go back to my kindergarten report card, it says Linda talks too much and won't stay in her seat. And then they called me gifted because we weren't calling anybody autistic then. And then they were like, oh, my bad. You are indeed autistic and ADHD. So that was a late diagnosis, right? But I wish operations leaders have been the one that has supported me in my career. That were like, you know the business. It's okay that you're a little rough. Your heart outweighs that you're a little too direct. I've not always been supported by the people that said they were there to support me. And I think we have to look at that. What box did we build? If you want to build a box that's all about image, just be honest about that. That, when you say no hair colors that didn't occur in nature, well, my hair is the color of a mallard duck. He occurred in nature. So technically, I have been on stages where I have to go, everybody's like, oh, you're so smart. And I'm like, you wouldn't hire me because of your dress code.
Mm.
You mentioned Mary Ibarra, and one of her huge changes at General Motors is she threw the dress code out the window and said, like, if I remember correctly, it was multiple pages long, and they had someone that their job was to manage the dress code. And she's like, yeah, dress for the situation, and you're an
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
So I think that when we say inclusion, we don't always mean it. And that's a hard conversation that people don't want to look at. Who are you leaving out? Are you only choosing the capital P professional, which has been polished within an inch of its life and doesn't even know what authenticity is anymore? When, your pattern seeker over in the corner. So when I refer to feral talent, those are octopus, right? They're pattern seekers. And They know what's going on. They've got that look. They're at the back of the conference room, like, that's going to happen. And we ignore them. We're like, why couldn't you be, more positive? And they're like, I'm positive it's going to happen. That's what I'm positive about. So why aren't we talking to those people? Why aren't we maybe sitting down and going, who are the 10 most difficult people in our organization? And are they actually difficult? Like they're problematic?
No.
Or are they well intentioned but not domesticated? And you're just
Ah,
upset about that.
your words, domesticated. Oh my goodness. But it's
Right.
spot
I'm
on.
not a petting zoo, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't call me in and go, just wait your turn.
And I think it can be two things. And I think it's fair enough that like, because I really enjoyed your terminology of being undomesticated. I think it's two things. It's like, I think be who you are, and then also
Yes.
like, if you want to be successful in an organization, I also think that like, look at the writing on the walls. Either somewhat like curate a little bit for the environment that you're in, or find a different environment because
Yes.
it's not going to work if nothing is if everything is stays rigid and it's in corner. It's going to fail, like. And I guess I wanted to kind of call back to your point around operations leaders. I would venture to guess, and let me know what you think, that operations really leaders really resonate with like, or saw you for who you are, because operations is forced and focused on ultimately getting it done, and how it gets done is a different conversation. Like if
It
you
is.
think about like management, more of the management side, from my perspective, it's more about like being a storyteller, sharing a story, like really like putting that together. And I think there's an articulation of how you can accomplish that. But like, I mean, I've seen in organizations like your management people and your operations people are at the core very different people, and you need them both.
Absolutely. And sometimes, we're like, well, they don't think very creatively. I'm like, it's your payroll person. Maybe it's okay that they're not creative,
Yeah, let's
you
make sure
know.
they get it right and out on
And to go
Friday.
back to something you said, because sometimes people are like, well, Linda, you can't just be wild. And I'm like, never said wild, never said anarchist, right? Feral, and this is my definition. So, feral is lead how you used to lead when you trusted yourself
Mhm.
and other people trusted you. You weren't seeking approval, you didn't need a gold star, you were just like, it could be how you lead under crisis. But situational adaptability is important, right? I'm going to have a big personality here because we're live and nobody wants me to go, today we're going to cover feral leadership. But if I had to go to New York next week on a merger and acquisition and I'm the HR leader, yeah, there's a suit probably. I'm talking to private equity. I'm going to use the big Scrabble language. But if I want to go out to an oil rig where I spent 10 years working with drilling teams, I'm going to sit on a tailgate and conduct a meeting or a 5 gallon bucket turned over. That situational adaptability
Yeah.
is one of my superpowers, that I can move in these spaces. Goes back to being the octopus, right? I can change the colors and hide in the situation as I need to, but also make someone who's blue collar feel as comfortable talking to me about their problem
Yeah.
as someone writing a check for an acquisition. And I think that trust, you earn that trust. I wish people would stop acting like trust is deserved. Trust is an outcome
Mm.
of what you were willing to do. So if you do, I tell you what, can I lead us in a direction of that quote that I love?
Yeah,
Does
go
that
for it.
work for you right
Yeah, yeah,
here?
yeah.
So, one of the unconventional things we're going to take from a cowboy that was born in 1910 and passed in 2003. So I ride, so you get horse analogies with me. But Tom Dorrance was the father of modern natural horsemanship. When you see like the horse whisperer and relating to horses and meeting them where they are, he was the father of that. And he was such a guide. So I want y'all to think about a time when you were leading and it didn't go well, and a time you were leading and it went super well, and see where it fits into this quote from him. So remember, he's talking about horses. First, you go with them, then they go with you, then you go together. So, what does that look like on a horse while y'all are still thinking about people? When I ride, even though I've owned my horse for 6 years, when I get on him, I don't ask him for anything. I let him, we wander across the arena, and he shows me, oh, I'm a little uptight today. I'm a little worried about that rooster over there in the corner. My leg still hurts where I ran through the fence the other day because he's not that smart and he's 8, so it's like a teenager. But I'm going with him. I'm following, right? Remember the triangulation of followership, leadership, and management. I am following. I'm letting him tell me where he is. And then at some point, I'm going to pick up the reins a little bit and I'm going to, hey, I would like to go over there. I'm now managing the situation. I'm not leading. I've got the reins. I say turn right. And he's like, oh, okay, I think I'll do that. He may not be entirely on board yet, but I've built some trust. He doesn't feel scared. He's like, all right, I can turn right. It may not be the prettiest right turn. It may not have a lot of energy, but he indeed turns right and we go across the arena. So now he goes with me, management. And then at some point, both of us relax and we're like, oh, this is good. We're having a nice day together. And his whole body relaxes underneath me. And if you ride horses, you will feel it. And his head will come down nice and pretty. And he's like, where would you like to go, ma'am? And I'm like, I would like to go over here. And he's like, I think that's a fabulous idea. And we go together.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of guideship in my book, is that if I don't go with you and feel where you are and hear your voice, and when you do finally go with me, but maybe you're not a little happy about it, I can't be mad about that. At least you took a step towards me. And then if we keep building trust, then we go together. But you earn that. You can't
Yeah.
have it just because of your business title.
Yeah.
So is
I have
that
no.
kind of what you're saying? Because you and I often say the same thing, but we're like different parts of the planet.
Yeah, no, no. I'm totally there with you. I mean, and to your analogy, and as a non-horse rider, but like, let's be real. Like, we know who's in charge here, and it's not you. It's like, I mean, but you can encourage that they drive the conversation or drive the direction ultimately, but like, just like a team, you're not moving. I don't know how much. I don't know how many pounds a horse weighs, or like 1,000 pounds. Like, you're not moving it just by yourself. It's like that's not
Yeah.
how it works. It's like it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
He's actually taught workshops with me. We've taken teams out to the barn and we're working on maybe cohesion with the team and we'll take them out to the barn and they don't get to ride because, liability. But they start at the beginning of the day and I'm like, hey, go out in the herd and pick out a horse that's going to be your friend today. Just show them your business card. I'm sure they'll listen, right? You got
see
to
how they
walk
go.
out there kind of confident, but calm and hey, it's okay to come with me. And
Yeah.
maybe you bring a snack, right? Like, hey, I'm cool. But really watching people because he is 2,000 pounds. He is a draft
Okay.
horse. I cannot outmuscle him. I
No.
can't out equipment him. He's put me in the hospital before. Like he has expressed his concerns before.
Yeah.
So it is. I need the cooperation. And do I want to? I can manage him, but it's not a very fun ride.
Yeah.
It's functional. We meet the KPIs of a ride, but we don't have cohesion. And most companies are looking for productivity. Did we get the ride? Did we also enjoy it? Was it the best ride? Oh, cohesion.
Yeah.
And I think we miss that, especially some of us of a certain age, right? I'm 57. So my first jobs were in the 80s and 90s where all we talked about was productivity. Nobody was like, Linda, how would you describe your job satisfaction? But it's important, right? I don't care if you made $100 million. If you don't care about cohesion, you lost money.
Yeah.
Could have been 125 million. Could have been 175 million. Are you okay settling for what you got instead of caring about cohesion?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, I mean, I think your this analogy it fully works with just the business world. Um, Kind of bringing it. So this morning, before also hopping on this call, I saw this quote by Layla Hormozy on LinkedIn, and it said something about like imposter syndrome, and it's like, I think if, and I'm going to misquote this, but it was something along the lines of, let's stop calling imposter syndrome like what it is. Let's call it for what it is. Like, you're not prepared. And I will say, like,
Ooh.
I didn't like it
I know. I'm
because,
sitting there with that, like, ooh.
yeah, you're like, yeah, it's where I go. And so this is also, from my perspective, this is also one of those those leaderships leaders, excuse me, that you want to tap into. These people that don't necessarily don't necessarily have like the polish and everything. They're maybe not initially like the people that you would go to, but like, and back to your point, like they lack the traditional experience or credentials, but they do bring a fresh perspective to things. So,
Mm-hmm.
for this example, you're thinking like Malala. I always butcher her last name, but like if you really think about it, like this woman came over like this crazy amount of global overcame diversity and then became this global advocate for human rights and girls at the end of the day. So there's these these little these nuggets of insights from people that don't have the credentials, don't have the initials or whatnot that we should be tapping into. And then also, at least last from my list is actually the unpredictables. So Jacinda Ardern is actually my example for this, and she's if you really think about it, like I mean, when she came into politics and kind of on the global stage, it was we haven't. I mean, tell me if you have a different experience or memory, but like I think it was a long time since we've seen a leader like that was celebrated for their empathy and their unconventional approach with leadership during a crisis. And I think that we also need to be looking in our organizations, or at least recognizing that also within ourselves, in terms of these people that don't follow a fixed leadership style. It's not a linear path. They adapt to various different situations and take risks and pivot and acknowledge when that they're wrong. And they ultimately, I think one of the beautiful things here too is that like people that are they're sharing the strengths of the outcomes, like they're not hoarding all of the successes. It's like they're giving, they celebrate their teams and their participation in whatever they're doing, and all of these people matter. And I mean, these are a small list of specific examples, but like all these people matter for unconventional leadership, collaborative leadership, and just kind of I think highlight the changing leadership models that we're currently in and that we will continue going in. Um, I mean, we already kind of went into some of like your traits, Linda, for some of these things, and I'll say speak for myself. Like I think that I've struggled for a long time. Like I sometimes I wish I had the polish. Like the polish is nice. The polish is I think is a little bit of the easier path to take, but I think you know as I'm maturing and everything, I'm trying to celebrate ultimately like the things that I bring to the table that like and I feel like acknowledging or at least having words for these different types of leadership styles, um, I don't know, just makes it feel less foreign, or at least like it's more that it can absolutely be celebrated within like a professional environment as well.
Agreed. And I think that, like when I see leaders all the time that are so polished, and I'm like, man, I wish. And I'm like, I'm glad that's their authenticity, right? Being feral doesn't mean you have to be a wolf or a wildcat. You can be feral and be very polished. So, I don't want people to think polish is bad. It's polish that people are not comfortable inside of, right? Or because it can really stray over into whitewashing. It can really stray over into code switching. It can really stray over into exclusive practices that everyone wants to believe they don't do. And most of us really actively have to work to take off those systems of oppression that might have been installed and you didn't even realize it. So, that's part of it. Some of it's now, we would not have talked about being neurodivergent 10 years ago. I'm a late diagnosis, mid 40s, before they went like, oh, sorry, it wasn't gifted. It was this over here. And I think, wow, those leaders that had me before we knew, wow, she struggles. She's autistic. She has sensory issues. That long sleeve suit you require me to wear every day, all I think about is when I can get out of it. All day. That's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking about. When can
Yeah.
I get this jacket off? But what's my superpower? Lateral thinking. I can connect like a leadership model to a horsemanship quote to a whitewater raft guide and make it make sense and be approachable. That's lateral thinking. It's one of the strongest things I have, and it's one of the most shut down practices in the first part of my career. Where people are like, could you just explain it in HR terms? Could you just, I'm like, no, but I can tell you a story. And to this day, I know people have like, what would Jesus do lanyards and yay. Mine is, what would Robin Williams say?
Oh.
Because my style is super similar to observational humor that's very pointed and direct and still makes a statement. And I have only allowed that to come out. in the last 8 years. And I'm a vocal, like, hey, I am autistic and ADHD, because people come up after events and they're like, hey, me too.
Yeah.
Hey, my kid. Hey,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Every now and then they say dumb things. Like someone will come up and go, I didn't know y'all could talk. And I'm like,
Oh,
so I don't speak for the body of people on the spectrum. And you said that in your outside voice. And don't do that again. But it's, and it's part of being me. Of, you know, am I going to have a meltdown in a room with 35 people all talking at once because you don't have any practices for controlling the crowd? Yeah, probably. I'm going to step out and need some quiet.
yeah.
Can I do a live like this with you and not look at notes and have a good time? And oh, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So it's those, I think we spent way too much time correcting the things that can never be correct. You're not going to correct that I procrastinate. You're just not. And people have tried valiantly. But think about what you get because I procrastinate. I'm really good in a crunch. I'm really good at the last minute. You call me the night before, like, we need a whole new deck. I'm like, Snoopy on the doghouse. Yes, let's do it. Oh, you want me to come to a meeting once a week for 24 months? No.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's leading to strengths, whatever model you follow. And the empathy is important because people couldn't hear that for a long time of, I'm not trying to be difficult. I cannot sit still for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Please, can we have a break?
One
So
of the
yeah, unpredictable is a good word. I might steal that one from you.
Yeah, take it. Um, this somewhat makes me think of. I mean, I think we've all been in environments. Well, hopefully you haven't, but I use this analogy where it's like, I've I've seen some organizations where it's, how do I say this? Like, you're asking for perfection, you're demanding a lot. Okay, fine, both of those things. But then on top of that, you have a gun at somebody's head, and then it's like, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
Right.
It's like, and so this also highlights just ultimately like management, leadership. This is all changing. It's like people have authority over how they choose to use their time, and it's like, you know, and I think this really like kind of leads us in. I'd like to talk about culture a little bit because we kind of hit that a little bit earlier regarding
Mm-hmm.
like the words on your wall, but it's like it absolutely means nothing unless like you're actually unless you're actually supporting it. So like I mean, I have a few ideas, but like in terms of culture, like some of the things like I really like, and I'll just rattle them off. But it's like questioning the norms, like that's a great one for like the rule breakers, like these. It's like encourage, like create spaces where employees feel safe to actually challenge outdated processes. And sure, fair enough, like maybe it's not the right time and maybe it's something that you have to prioritize things accordingly, but it's like I think within I think it's a reasonable assumption that at least like on a yearly basis, like, and sure, fine, maybe like have it constructive and maybe have it like, some guardrails or whatever, and like,
Sure.
you know, be real about the environment. But it's like, you know, question, ask, innovate. I think at the end of the day, like literally all of these different types of archetypes, these types of people within your organizations lead and encourage and bring innovation. And what I also think that like these people, like the real special thing about these people is that like put them in a room with the people that maybe aren't the rule breakers. You kind of get these other people thinking differently and excited and maybe passion reinvigorated. And it's like it's an opportunity to like cultural wise, like amplify like amplifying voices, like finding form of, how do I say this, everything doesn't need to be a meeting. So if you really want to have an environment where people are celebrate different ways for people to contribute thoughts. So it doesn't always have to be a meeting. It doesn't always have to be like face to face. It could potentially be via email, like, quick brainstorming sessions, whatever. But the point is that like I think we need
You
to
have
get
to keep
away.
them safe. Like
Yes.
that's like if you want people to be unpredictable, it has to be safe. If they speak up and then someone talks to them later about it, they're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
If they speak up and someone talks about them behind their back, they're not going to do it again. And that's where I see us fall down as guides, where we don't keep people safe. And what you're talking about is safety. If I give you an anonymous way to contribute, or hey, come by the dry erase board sometime this week and put it up, I am providing safety. if I
Yeah.
say something besides the people that have been here 10 years. Like Gen Z, amazing. Like, thank you. Please come into leadership. Please make me completely irrelevant because I love how they think. One of my students gave me one of my best compliments ever a few years ago. And he's like, Professor Clark, you're just like us, except you have disposable income. And I was like, if that's not the coolest thing that a
That's like the
20
nicest thing you
something,
could say to me.
like really, it was super cool because he wasn't like, oh, you're a dinosaur. And I know I can be a dinosaur about some things, but this isn't it. But we have to send the elevator back down and then we have to make it safe to get on it. And that's the part we miss. We're like, there's the elevator, and people, I'm like, there's a Doberman inside of it. It growls, it barks. Oh, but he's a good guy. How about you get rid of the Doberman?
Yeah.
And that's why I don't talk too much about toxic cultures. You know if your culture's toxic and you
Yeah.
know what you're supposed to be doing. And me coming and talking for 2 days and doing a team building is not going to fix if you have a Doberman roaming your hallways. What I talk about is the guardship, which is well intentioned, right? I'm trying to be professional, but it's still gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And, it's unfortunate when people are in the really unhealthy cultures and I'm like, let me help you leave them. That's all I know to do now is like, no, don't stay. No, don't try and fix it. If you see it and no one's putting out the fire, go ahead and continue your career where
Yeah.
you can be successful.
Yeah.
Because companies that are like, well, we don't worry about our culture. I'm like, well, you understand you have one. It's like saying you don't worry about your house, so you have mold in your basement. Just because you don't worry about it doesn't mean
Yeah.
something's not happening.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and let me ask you this, because I think one of the things too is John's also, especially if it's a dumb Doberman.
Yeah,
That's all.
like the genetics of vicious and protective and dumb is a bad combo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
I wish
well,
I could see the chat. We'll fix that for next time, but
yeah, we'll figure this out. Thank you guys. Uh, Also, I mean, I think a big part of it too, and I think this resonates for me is, but having an environment that also allows for a degree of vulnerability. It's like I think that, yes, do you want to be at at work, do you want to be professional? Of course. Do sometimes things like kind of rub you a little bit wrong way, or like kind of kind of get you where you didn't intend? Yeah. And I think
yeah.
that like I've some of my favorite leaders I've actually worked with have been vulnerable, and just I remember like, and I've had leaders that I've worked under that have been kind of like corporate bots and everything, and I've had people that have just been like spoke to you like human to human, like just been real. And I haven't always liked those people at all moments, but I will say I think I've always respected them, which I think is one of the most important things. So I think an organization that allows for vulnerability, and maybe maybe I also think for like the vulnerability part of it also like allows for like mentorship. It's like, hey, if you see somebody that like maybe they have certain things to work on, and you can like pair them up with somebody that's kind of has something a little like tuned in. I think that there's like this this collaboration or partnership that actually could work really well.
So I agree. And the thing I've got with mentors is they have to be guides. And
Yeah.
sometimes we go pick the person most resistant to change, that's most committed to their legacy and their way of doing things. And we're like, could you be a mentor? And then we lock people up with them while they're like, what you should be doing. And it's like,
Yeah.
what you should be doing is being quiet and letting them talk,
Yeah.
right? That guide mentality, like if going back to the whitewater guides, you don't see a trainer. Old guides teach new guides. There's a high school in Georgia, and I wish I knew the name of it, but one of the outfitters up here, they bring the seniors up, and the seniors learn how to run the river. And then a few weeks later, the freshmen come, and the seniors take the freshmen down the river. And it's like the handoff, right,
Yeah.
of the old guard to the new guard, and they welcome them to the school and like super nice. And I'm sure it's a private school with that kind of budget. But I really love that that's that mentality of if there's not mentoring occurring in your organization already, then you have a guideship issue because guides can't help but pass it on.
Yeah.
But your most trusted people are, it doesn't matter what title you give them, people are
Yeah.
still going and talking to them. They know 100% what's going on in your organization. Just because you didn't ask them doesn't mean they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's really the intel that we're missing,
Yeah.
right? When you mentioned, like, I know people, And I was one of them at one time, right? I had 21 letters behind my name that said I was smart and good, but I also was a lot like Miranda Priestley, and I
Mm,
didn't really have good people skills.
yeah.
So I'll take now with less letters behind my name and blue hair, but man, people trust me, and I get a chance to work on really hard stuff with them
Yeah.
versus I had the suit and all the letters and nobody wanted to come talk to me.
Yeah. Kelly mentioned something spot on in the chat. Kelly Akamura, humble leadership, and I think that, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, and I think this really speaks to also like the symbiotic relationship between mentor and mentee. The reality
Hmm.
is like, as a mentor, I also think that they learn a lot from, you know, from the mentee as well. So it's like, I realize like we kind of have this kind
Yes.
of top down structure, but it is fully not. And I think that's like a terrible way to think about it, and you're literally not getting what you want out of it anyway with that format. um, and also I think this also speaks to, I think, uh, embracing adaptability. I think rewarding quick thinking and agility in dynamic situations. And everybody listening, I actually I wrote this out actually in like a worksheet, not a worksheet, just like a design. So I'm happy to share at least like some of these ways that like you can take your culture and actually build it out for some of these unconventional leaders. So, you know, feel free to reach out to Linda or I for any of like some of this stuff, but we'll send it your way. But I think we have to be thinking about leadership a little bit differently, and
Yeah.
times are changing. I think that gone are the days where it's, you know, you just barking orders at people. It's just, um, you're going to get better work done, quality work done, increase your bottom line, maintain stability and consistency, less turnover. I mean, I think all of these things, like, but let's look at these different gifts. Like, you have these people on your teams. You may be this person that you really want to consider, like how they can ultimately help your organization. And I don't think we're considering them oftentimes enough. And I don't think that we're I don't know if we're always fully okay just acknowledging that we are these people at the end of the day. And I
Oh,
think that's
yeah.
also a big
People
part
are
of it too.
terrified of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Um, Linda, do you have like a
watch your
bold?
time.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yes. So Linda, do you have like a bold takeaway? And then if anything, we'll like, if anybody has questions, feel free to. I'll go take a look at the chat and we'll kind of address them as well.
I really think, I love the scene in Alice in Wonderland where they're like a very merry unbirthday to you. And I really want people to think about unleadership development because we know how to lead instinctively when we
Yeah.
care about our herd and we know how to collaborate. And we killed it with perfectionism and driving. Everybody's got to be 100. And if you want this trust and you want this feral ability to talk and
Yeah.
vulnerability and to feel, it's really peeling layers back. It's
Yeah.
not a thing to add on, it's what you go back to. So I think that's the big thing is remembering the definition of a feral is how you led when you trusted yourself and you were supported to think that way
Yeah.
because they go together.
Yeah.
Feral's not alone.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat. So from John Seltzer, as a leader, how do you teach
Oh,
your
good.
people?
He was patient and stayed. He was being nice to me on LinkedIn while
I
we
mean,
had a debate.
honestly, thank you all of you guys for
Yeah.
being patient
Thanks,
while we're
y'all.
figuring it out. Well, it is what it is. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
As a leader, how do you teach people to accept that and effectively contribute to the solution when asked?
I let them self identify. Over and over again, what has worked for me is whatever exercise you do, be open about as a leader. So, hey, let's look at career stallers, which is inside of the Corn Ferry model, which I love. And I'll go through them. And I'm like, oh, by the way, I was a blocked personal learner at one point, right? HR people, sometimes we run into that. We're like, I wrote that policy. And so when a team hears me admit which one I struggle with, and then I'm like, and for you, I do not go. It's that whole Ron White joke where he tells his wife, like, let me tell you about you. That never goes well. Think about how many times you've been resistant. If my husband says to me, I've been with this man 20 something years, and he's like, you're being stubborn. I am not. Well, I've been stubborn since the day you started dating me, but I will argue with him. But if he says, what do you think's wrong right now? Oh, I'm being stubborn. Letting people self identify, give them a sheet of competencies and say, tell me the three you're the best at, tell me the three you don't care about. We don't all have to be good at all of them. Tell me the three you kind of suck at, and you would like to do better. And then if it doesn't match what you think, that's still a conversation. But we have got to stop telling people what's wrong with themselves, because they've already been telling themselves that all day long behind the scenes in their head, and you are just noise on top of it. So judge first and let them know that. That's the trust, that I'm okay saying I don't know. I'm okay saying I can't sit still in a 2 hour meeting. Like, I'm starting to wiggle now. So that's more important than when I was polished and perfect and bullet pointed within an inch of my life and acted like, oh no, it's just you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not just you.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge the contributions that people can make and how they make them. I think that, John, to your question, I don't think everybody's going to have a contribution every single time, and I think
Mm-mm.
that maybe it's, asking questions a little bit differently. And I think for those people that also contribute here and there, I think those people that are selective with their words, I think you really have to consider, and I guess those are the quiet, gosh, what was the terminology? The quiet leaders, let's consider, but like,
The
the
owls, right? Like
yeah,
super
they
chill
speak
and
in
like
few
boom.
words, but they say so much. And so, like, if you're trying to pull things out of people and everything, it's twofold. It's like sometimes I think there sometimes are people that aren't fits in certain organizations, and I think that's fair. I think that works both ways. So back to Linda's point earlier, it's like, get out, encourage them, or potentially find a path, or maybe find a different role.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you know people have those contributions every so often, that it's like giving them opportunity to like speak, listen, don't interrupt. Dennis called it out also in the chat. He's like, yeah, give them a safe space to
Oh, is
talk
Dennis
about their,
there?
yeah, Dennis here. Hey, and let it, and I appreciate his, I really appreciate what he's added here. And I think this is probably a great way to kind of wrap this up. Letting people to know it's okay to suck at some things.
Amen.
Right?
Like, make fun of it. When
Yeah.
I'm on stage, I tell people, like, you know what? If you die, I cannot help you. I cannot help you get buried. I don't know how to prepare your body. If you have brain cancer, don't call me. I
Yeah.
also suck at that. I cannot get donkeys to do anything. I can get a horse to. When people hear you just go, I'm not good with that, it makes it normal.
Mm.
It's all right. There's room
Yep.
for all of us.
No, absolutely. Linda, Linda, do you want to end with a pitch? I would like to encourage everybody to go follow myself and Linda. I'd love for you to encourage you guys to connect with one another in the chat. Um, but Linda, you
You're
take it.
welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. I love supporting you. Tell me what your adventures are. If you would like to be I teach a once a month free webinar, that because I really wanted people to have access to leadership development. So it's free, happens on around the second Tuesday of the month. The next one is on April 8th. You can just text the word quest, QUEST, to a short code. It's 66866. You'll be on my mailing list. Again, I'm ADHD, so I send about once a month email. There's no chance I'll spam you because I won't remember, but you'll get an invitation to the webinar, and I'd love to see you there.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us. This will be recorded, edited, available on the Ideas Citizen podcast. If you're not a member of the Ideas Citizen LinkedIn group, please go join. And we look forward to having these more often. And I anticipate that Linda and I will have another one of these together again on a different topic. So thank you all.
Thanks for the support, y'all. Bye.
Okay, cool. I stopped it. All right. How do you feel?
I think that went well.
I think too. I hope